Of course, your Cincinnati Reds were going to blow that game last night against the Miami Marlins. We'll tell you what we mean on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong, for better or for worse, Cincinnati Reds fans. And we have been podcasting for the better part of 12 years combined about these Cincinnati Reds, and we want to bring to you a daily, accessible show about the Cincinnati Reds, about the big thing going on in Reds country. We'll dive into some geeky numbers, and we'll overreact to the 162, because Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And I'm glad that you are with us here today, because on today's show, we are going to go over some brand new prospect rankings from RedsMinorLeagues.com and our friend Doug Gray, as he has been watching the Reds Minor Leagues all season long, as he has done for a while now. And he's got some new rankings for us to peruse through, a couple of interesting risers and fallers in the ranks, and he'll give us his most surprising player of the year. That's coming up later on in today's show. We're also going to dive into this whole, should the Reds extend Elly De La Cruz or shouldn't they? Well, they should, but it's not really up to them. We'll tell you what we mean here in just a few minutes. But we will begin with a very unsurprising loss to the Miami Marlins by your Cincinnati Reds. And that's all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And you can guarantee, Steve, by the way, before we get into it, welcome back. It's great to see you. Our schedules have been quite wonky here, so it's great to have you back, especially after the wonderful performance that we just saw down in South Beach.
I've been super busy, tied up in the old ER, Jeff, and I sat down yesterday, had the day off, was ready to watch a Reds game, leaned back in the recliner, and Andrew Abbott punched me in my face is what he did. Man, 6 runs on 6 hits, all of them earned, gave up a grand slam home run in the first inning. And of course, that was what was going to happen. And not only because I finally had a day off and could watch the game, but because everything was lining up for this moment to happen. It was the Double-A Miami Marlins, who always struggle against left-handed pitching, with the Reds having an opportunity to pull closer to being a 500 ball club, for the Reds, who are going to have an opportunity to have a legitimate shot at a 4-game series sweep. Of course, this is what was going to happen.
I love how you said Double-A. I've been calling them a quadruple A team, but I understand the dig here, because, they've traded away everybody. And quite frankly, the Reds were getting right. The first 2 games of this series were all Reds, baby. There were a few little hiccups there from Nick Lodolo, and a few little hiccups in the first game as well, where the Marlins actually scored runs. But on the whole, this has been all Reds. So, of course, based on the way that this entire season has gone, they were going to lose one of these games. And that's why I said coming into this series, they had to sweep this series, because had they done so, they'd have entered Milwaukee this weekend 1 game under 500. And boy, we'd be feeling all right about that, even though they just beat up on the Marlins. And that's the other point to this too. They were able to come back in this game, but they missed their chance multiple times, including the top of the 9th inning, to either tie the game or take the lead. The Reds left so many runs on the bases last night. And that is, for me, almost as frustrating as Andrew Abbott's poor start. And Andrew Abbott really, the first inning doomed the Reds. If you got mad, so, Andrew Abbott gives up 5 runs. And if you got mad and turned off the game, you didn't miss anything. And that's the thing about this team. They get these opportunities where it seems as though the ball is placed on the tee and all they got to do is swing. And for the better part of this season, they've been missing that.
Well, you did miss a couple things if you turned it off in the first inning. You missed a 2-for-4 day from Jake Fraley. You missed a 2-for-4 day from Tyler Stevenson, and you missed TJ Friedel's first career
Mr.
grand.
Friedel.
So
Yep.
there were some things. So, you've done a couple shows now talking about how the Reds were cooking down in Miami, and the offense still cooked a little bit, but it's just unfortunate that Andrew Abbott put them in such a big hole that they couldn't quite dig out of it. They made it interesting. Bases loaded in the 9th inning. They were in it all the way up until the end of the game, but they just couldn't quite overcome that avalanche of runs that Miami put up in the bottom of the first inning.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me. Like, this whole year, the Reds pitching staff has just been the thing that's carried them. Whenever the pitching staff doesn't carry them, there's two things that has to happen, it feels like, for the Reds to win. Either Elly has to go off or the pitching has to go off. And when neither one of those things happens, the Reds lose, period. Like, I don't think there's an example to the contrary of that. Like, one of those things has to happen for the Reds to win. And Andrew Abbott was kind of set up nicely in this game, because I was listening a little bit to Marlins coverage and our friend Peter Pratt over at Locked On Marlins and some folks talking about this team. And they're like, boy, we're facing Lodolo and Abbott in this series. And the Marlins, even before the trades, couldn't hit left-handers to save their lives. Uh-oh. What are they going to do? Well, they just hit a bunch of home runs off Andrew Abbott. That's all they ended up doing in this game. It's more frustration from a team that has just delivered frustration on a silver platter to us all season long. And I don't want to hammer it too much, because it sounds as though, I'm disappointed in this, and as though I thought that there was a chance that they're going to get back in this playoff race. But that third wild card spot still seems a little tantalizing, because it doesn't seem like anybody can take a stranglehold of this thing. But just as soon as the Reds think that they're going to start convincing us otherwise, they show us that most of us who have come down to reality about their playoff chances are right to have come down to reality about them.
So as we're recording this, there's still 5.5 games from the final wild card spot.
So that being May.
Right. So that being said, and the fact that this team, if they're going to make any kind of move at all, they've got to be creative, and they've got to start racking up some wins, and they've got to scratch and claw their way back into this. So let me ask you this. Given the fact that they lost to the Marlins yesterday, and Hunter Greene is supposed to go today, would you consider a bullpen day today and push Hunter to starting the first game of the Milwaukee series? Because I think the Reds could win a bullpen day against the Marlins, because I don't think they're going to lose 2 in a row to the Marlins. And then you get Hunter Greene to start the first game of that set with the Brewers.
My only thing with that is, because you can't get Nick Martinez to pitch that game. He threw a lot on Monday. Jacob Junis did just pitch in this game. He's pitched twice in this series already. The only thing is, who do you throw? Because I would be, from a strategy standpoint, I would like that. And I know what you're saying here, because that would put Greene and Carson Spires in that series against Milwaukee. And then I think, would Lodolo be in that? I think he might be on the Sunday game. So you're going to have 3 good shots on the starting side of things to at least keep the Brewers low on the scoreboard. I think I would. Something tells me they won't, but I could be talked into it if I knew who was
right. I think it should be considered. I just think, if I've got a choice between letting everybody in the bullpen pitch an inning and then letting Hunter Greene pitch against Milwaukee, or letting Hunter Greene just go out there and decimate the Miami Marlins and then having to figure it out against the Brewers, I'm letting everybody pitch an inning today against the Fish and having Hunter Greene start against the Brewers. It just makes more sense to me.
I would like that, and I think that would make sense. The only thing is, like, if you're telling me you're going to throw Yosver Zulueta out there,
one inning. It's an inning.
I don't know, man.
Against the Fish, it's an inning.
I think you're right, though. I don't think that there are two instances where where the Marlins are going to score that many runs on the Reds. So I think I'm in on this idea. I don't know that the Reds would do it, though, because I think that they're just going to be like, nope, we had Hunter Greene on the schedule. We're going to throw him. And sure, they might win this game 12-zip to finish out the series, but that's not going to make me feel better about winning 3 out of 4 of a series that they should have won 4 out of 4.
Oh, this is what I know, Jeff. There's been several Reds players that have had themselves a nice jump start, a nice reset, a nice renaissance down there against the Miami Marlins. And one of those dudes is none other than Elly De La Cruz. And with Elly having several big nights recently, plus Major League Baseball pushing him as one of the faces of the sport, everybody's starting to ask the question, can the Reds sign him to an extension in the offseason? Will the Reds sign him to an extension in the offseason? Well, we're going to talk about it coming up next. You can take the guesswork out of buying your Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Listen, Jeff and I tell you about this app all the time. We both love it. We both use it all the time. With Game Time, you get all-in pricing. You know exactly what you're going to pay for your seat. And if you're going to a venue that you don't know, they offer the view that you're going to have from your seat, so you know exactly what you're going to get and exactly how much it's going to cost you. Jeff and I use this when we head down to the banks. We find a good spot to post up pregame, have a couple beverages, get a dinner, and then as it's getting close to first pitch, we jump on the Game Time app. We look for the tickets that we want. We grab them. They download. We head over to the ballpark. It is just that easy. On top of the already greatly discounted prices you're going to find on the Game Time app, if you download the Game Time app today and create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, you're going to get $20 more off of your first purchase. That's right. Deeply discounted tickets plus a $20 discount. Terms do apply. So again, just create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. While you're here, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell in your audio feed, subscribe there, tell your friends. We love being your first listen each and every day. Now we want you to make Locked On MLB the podcast that's your second listen every day. Host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here and in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff, I kind of set this up there at the end of the last segment. Elly has been going off the last several games, not so much last night, but earlier in this series, really going off. And you did a good job of covering that while I was out. It's got people talking again about who should be the next young player that the Reds extend. And of course, with Elly being so hot, with Elly being one of the faces that Major League Baseball is pushing to be a face of the sport, naturally it makes sense that people are talking about, it's time to lock up Elly. Here's the thing that I don't think that people take into consideration. I think everyone just expects it to be, well, the problem is all that needs to happen is Phil Castellini just needs to go down there and tell him, here's an extension for you, Elly. That's not how it works. Elly De La Cruz has an agent that is charged with one job. His agent is Scott Boras. You all know that name. And his one job is to get the single best deal for Elly De La Cruz that he possibly can, whereby making himself a boatload of money at the same time. That is Scott Boras's job. So you have to wonder, is Scott Boras going to allow Elly De La Cruz to sign an extension, Jeff?
And that is the point of all of this. And I think that, a lot of folks are going immediately to the Reds will never do it because they're too cheap. Well, in this case, literally, Scott Boras is the man in charge. There is nothing that the Reds can do right now to extend Elly De La Cruz, and that is not because they're going to lowball him. That is not because they're going to offer him an inadequate offer. Like, at this point, Scott Boras, and a lot of folks are saying, well, he had a really rough offseason last year with some of his free agents, and they didn't get long-term deals like Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and all these other guys, so he's probably angling to sign somebody. He's looking at Elly De La Cruz like everyone else is. He is a talent that we have seen very few of, if ever. And he is going to make sure that he gets every single penny possible. By that, I literally mean, Steve, if Phil went to, and Phil's not the guy that does this, this would be Nick Kroll or Brad Mead or somebody like this. But if they went and they said that I am authorized to sign Elly De La Cruz and become the first ever $1 billion player ever, like go as high as you could possibly think and just absolutely tick everybody off in Reds country, because if he got $1 billion, I think everybody would be really mad about that for some reason, whatever. Baseball money's not real. But if they did that, Scott Boras would be like, that's a pretty good offer. I'm going to wait, though, because if you're offering me $1 billion now, what's he going to be worth next year when he's better? Because he's just getting started. Nobody is denying that.
And he's going to be saying things like, if the Cincinnati Reds are going to give you X amount of dollars, billion with a B, Jeff, come on. If the Reds are going to give you X amount of dollars, the Dodgers are going to give me double that amount of dollars. The Yankees might be willing to give me triple that amount of dollars. And the only way we're going to find that out is on the open market. So I just don't see this. And listen, this is not just me speculating that this is what Scott Boras is going to do. Back in May, there was an article in the Cincinnati Enquirer where Scott Boras talked about Elly De La Cruz
quotes
and young players signing an extension. For the YouTube folks, it's going to come up on the screen here. For the audio guys, I'm going to read it to you just a little bit. This is quoting Scott Boras. Give me the best extension you know of, Scott Boras said, who represents De La Cruz and a handful of other Reds players, including Matt McLain and Jonathan India. Quote, where's the one that's worked out great for a player, a great young player, and he signed an extension and that worked out great for him? How'd Mike Trout's go? Mike Trout gave up the age 26, 27, and 28 season he's talking about there. In other words, leaving millions more on the table for his prime earning years by signing a 6-year, $144 million deal with the Angels early in his career. In a few more other words, don't count on Elly De La Cruz being a Red beyond his final arbitration eligible season in 2029. Not if his star continues to rise. And it is continuing to rise, everybody. More quotes from Scott Boras. My point is, for a bad player, extensions work out great. That's what Boras said. For a bad player, extensions work out great. How many teams offered bad players extensions? So when people ask me that question, I go, good, go find me the extension that works out for the player. Basically, he's hitting on everything you and I just said. If the Reds are offering X dollars, well, what's he going to be worth next year when he's better? What's he going to be worth on the open market when the Dodgers and the Yankees and whoever else has got big money is willing to give him more than that? Elly De La Cruz is a phenomenal talent. I am so glad he's a member of the Cincinnati Reds. I am going to enjoy every single at-bat that he wears the Cincinnati Reds uniform. And there is going to come a day where he is going to be traded away. That's what's going to happen. I'm not going to enjoy any of his at-bats any less because I know that's coming somewhere down the road. I'm going to enjoy it now. He's going to help this Reds team become a winner now, and they're going to trade him for a lot of pieces later that's going to keep this Reds team good in a market that they can't compete in financially. That being said, Jeff, one more component to this, and I know everybody's like, God, contract talk in the middle of the season, but here we go. Before Elly De La Cruz becomes eligible for free agency, while he is still under team control, baseball's collective bargaining agreement ends, and there's going to be an economic overhaul in this sport like we've never seen before. Yeah. That's why people aren't signing big money deals last offseason for the most part, the exception of Shohei Ohtani. That's why Scott Boras' clients struggle so much. Everybody wants to see where the dust settles and what baseball is going to look like after this. So nobody's signing Elly to the kind of money that it would take to sign Elly until they know what the economics look like. So I'm just going to enjoy having Elly here. I'm going to enjoy these young players, this young core that's going to be together. Where's our chart, Jeff, of the team control between now and when people drop off? Look at this list, folks, for you guys on YouTube. If you're on the audio feeds, jump over to the YouTube feed and check out this chart that Jeff has, or we'll tweet it out. It's been a while since we put it out there. The main core of this team is under control for a long, long time still yet. this baseball team has the ability to win some games, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. I'm not going to worry about who they got to trade later.
Yeah, and it's not as if Elly is the only guy that's going to be a free agent after the 2029 season. Matt McClain, Spencer Steer, Will Benson, CES, Andrew Abbott, Brandon Williamson, and Hunter Greene are all under team control through 2029. And guys, here's the other part of this, and I won't go too much on this because I think that Steve hit this point mostly, but just to bring it home, if you're watching Elly De La Cruz hit 4 hits with 2 homers and 2 doubles, and then the very next day get another 4 hits with 2 doubles, 2 singles, a steal, 2 runs, and just looking absolutely fantastic. And there's any amount of you that is worried that he's going to not sign an extension in 5 years, I don't know what to tell you, because there is no such thing as a career player for one team anymore. That's just not how this game is played anymore. That's the new era of baseball. Free agency killed that a long time ago. And as much as we would have loved to see Joey Votto be that last guy, he's probably at some point going to be called up to be a Toronto Blue Jay by the end of this season. So he will officially wear another uniform, i.e., he will not be a career Red, which is a little bit of a bummer for me. But yeah, that's just the reality of this game. So don't let that sap your enjoyment from watching him play, because he is absolutely phenomenal, and we are going to be treated to 5 of the best years of baseball that we will ever see from a single player. And I'm sure we'll touch on that more between now and 2029. So I don't want to go too much longer about it here today, but it was definitely a topic that was in the Reds country sphere, and there were a lot of folks thinking about it. But look, it's not up to the Reds. It's up to Scott Boras. And Scott Boras, he's going to say no. All right, let's turn our attention now, because we are into updated prospect rankings season. We are getting toward the end of the minor league season. And so looking at how the Reds prospect rankings have moved, kind of been a bit of a down year for them. There's one specific guy that we counted on this past offseason to be a big part of this pitching depth that now we're not really sure where he fits into the organization at all. Talk about that coming up next. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Take the Reds home broadcast with you everywhere. Also, make sure you bookmark CincinnatiRedsTalk.com for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. All right, let's jump into my conversation with Doug Gray and his updated Reds prospect rankings. Well, the dust has settled from the trade deadline and from the draft signing deadline, and all the deadlines are passed. So we can officially update the rankings, and there's no better person to do that than the man who runs RedsMinorLeagues.com, Doug Gray. And I think firstly, when I look at the rankings, when I looked at yours and a couple of other different websites, the first thing that I noticed was the fact that the top 10, let alone the top 5, did not include the name of Connor Phillips. He was a guy that during the offseason, Steve and myself really listed him high up on the, the depth chart, as it were, for the Reds starting pitching. If they had to go past the main five, even the main six, he was a guy that would probably get the call pretty quickly. But he has absolutely not been anything like what we expected this season.
Yeah, I mean, if you could say the best thing that happened for Connor Phillips this year is that, as far as we know, he's still healthy. Like that's probably it. He started out the year with a solid start in Louisville. And then after that, I mean, he got beat around every start. Like, there was a time, early June, I mean, I tweeted it out. Like, you can't keep sending him out to the mound every night. Like, he's giving up 10, 11, 12 base runners every start, but he's not making it 5 innings. Like, he was just getting utterly destroyed every time he went out. And eventually they pulled the plug on it. And I mean, I hate to harp on it, but let's be honest. Like, it was so bad that they took the chance and just said, hey, we're shutting it down and we're sending you all the way back to Goodyear. You're not going to pitch in games. And I mean, he hasn't pitched in over 2 months in games that we see. I mean, it was bad, and you couldn't really see that coming. Like, there were some people that had some questions about, hey, is his future going to be a starter reliever? That control's a little bit iffy, but even when he was having iffy control, he wasn't getting just crushed. He would just walk some guys and give up a hit or two. I mean, he was walking as many guys as he struck out pretty much. He was hitting some batters, and the strikeouts just disappeared. And when guys were making contact, it was loud, hard contact. I mean, I dropped him from, the top 5. Let's see where I got him at 18 now. And that's just because, there's a chance. Like, he still got that pure raw stuff. Even when he was struggling, like, he was still sitting mid to upper 90s. The slider still would look good at times. So the stuff is still there. So you don't want to write him off and give up on him. But, like, he dropped really, really far down the prospect rankings. And at this point, you just don't really know, because I don't want to say that he had the yips, because it's not like he was struggling to throw strikes and missing the strike zone by 5, 6, 10 feet. Like, he was missing the strike zone a little bit, but he was finding a lot of the middle of the strike zone, and guys weren't missing it. And so, you can see the path for recovery there. Whatever it happens to be that they're working on with him out in Goodyear, hopefully it works, because, again, the stuff is there, and he is healthy as far as we know. But, yeah, you could not have imagined a worse season for a guy who stayed healthy.
Yeah, that's all of the reporting, and then when I looked at the stats and things like that, I was just like, my goodness. And like you said, the thing that stood out to me first and foremost was the walks and the strikeouts, and just the absolute – there was barely a gap at all between how many more strikeouts he had as opposed to how many more walks he had given up. But with his kind of free fall down the rankings, as it were, there was a guy who he did have a pretty solid season, albeit he was a guy that won Pitcher of the Year last year for the Reds farm system. So it's not as if he was a surprise, but Julian Aguilar has continued to really perform well at the minor league level. He's a guy, and I don't necessarily know what this would look like. I feel like the Reds need to play a little bit of load management with Nick Lodolo if they're going to, manage his innings accordingly, if 150 is the number there. And maybe one of the ways they could do that is bring up Julian Aguilar and have him make a couple of starts. But what have you seen from him? I know that he makes your top 10 in these updated rankings.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, this is not a rip on Julian Aguilar. Part of it is just other guys have failed to perform. I mean, like you said, he was my minor league pitcher of the year last year. I mean, at this point, he might be the favorite to repeat. He's in AAA now. He had a good season earlier this year in Chattanooga, which is AA. Now, he's a guy that, he throws strikes, and he's always had success. He's got good velocity with his fastball. Strikeouts are down this year a little bit. I think he's more of a back end of the rotation guy. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think he's like a swingman type where, you're not sure if he's going to be, your middle reliever type guy, or maybe a guy that moves to the back of the bullpen if the stuff plays up. Like, I think he's a solid number 4 guy in the future. Now, whether that's going to be right now or not, I don't know. Like, we're in a weird situation, Jeff, where like the gap between the minor leagues and the major leagues, I don't think it's ever been bigger than it is right now. Major league teams can only have 165 players on their minor league rosters now. It used to be 180. So that's 15 roster spots. And you don't really think that plays a large role, but I think that it really has. And talking to other people that, cover the minor leagues for a living, scouts, like they're all saying the same thing. Like the level of play is lower at every single level this year than it has been in the past. And you really can see it if you've been around long enough and watched enough baseball. Like it's not the same. The gap is a lot bigger now. So, I'm a little bit hesitant looking at almost anybody in the minor leagues and going, okay, yeah, I think this can step into the major leagues right now, because it's not like the past where, if you were finding success in AAA, like, yeah, if you've got the talent and the stats that back it up, yeah, you're probably going to step in right away and perform. We've seen a lot of top prospects, like elite level top prospects from all around baseball, get called up this year and kind of struggle right away. That wasn't used to be the case. And I think that it really is that the gap is so big now that there's a larger adjustment period for a lot of these guys.
I do want you to get to your surprise guy because, all right, so on the count of three, we'll say his name. I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about. 3, 2,
I bet you don't.
1. Adam
Chase
Sirwanowski? Oh, no. Okay.
So, I don't want to say it's a big surprise because, he was a top 5, top 10 guy, depending on where you look coming into the year. But, I've got him. I jumped him ahead of Rhett Lauder this year. I think that his stuff has taken a big step forward. In the past, let's go all the way back to high school. Chase Petty, when he was drafted, was a guy who had hit triple digits in high school. But then once he got drafted, like he wasn't throwing that hard. He was throwing low 90s and he'd touch 95. Now that was by design. They decided, or maybe it was he decided, maybe it was the Twins. I'm not sure exactly who it was, but he started throwing a 2-seam fastball and, had really good results with it. Tons of ground balls, no problems with his stats on the field. It was working for him. Well, this offseason, he decided, you know what? I'm going to start throwing harder. Started throwing 98 miles an hour. His fastball velocity is better. His cutter is absolutely disgusting this year. Really good changeup. I just think he's got 3+ pitches. The performance hasn't quite been there. He's been a little bit inconsistent. He had a really bad April. He's been pretty good since, but he still had those clunker starts in there. I just think that, he's really taken a step forward. And maybe if you just kind of look at the stats, you don't quite see that. But if you watched all of his starts this year, I think it's clear that he's got the second best stuff in the minor leagues right now, only behind Chase Burns.
That's exciting because, he was a guy that, and especially when I do look at those numbers, like I see, the numbers aren't that great. But like you said, like there's a lot more to that, especially in the minor leagues. You can really kind of, miss a lot of stuff if you just look at the statistics. So it's a good thing to hear when you got 3+ offerings. We talk so much about, Hunter Greene finally took that next step. He's not just a 2-pitch guy anymore. Nick Lodolo, he is adding to his arsenal. Like being just a 2-pitch guy is really hard to be a good starting pitcher. The fact that the Chase Petty already has 3+ offerings, or at least hopefully to that point, if he can keep developing them, that's encouraging to see. And I'm glad to hear that he's moved up. And kind of like you said, you have him higher up in the rankings. Your top 5 is Chase Burns, Alfredo Duno, Chase Petty at number 3, Rhett Lauder at number 4, and then Edwin Arroyo there at number 5 as well. And you can catch all of Doug's rankings over at RedsMinorLeagues.com. He has, like you said, a top 25. I did think you were going to talk about Adam Sirwanowski there, so I'm kind of surprised a little bit. But no, I know that he's had a nice
Sirwanowski's been a guy that he jumped up the rankings. Like, so it was a good guess, but just Chase Petty wowed me. That's all. Chase Petty wowed me more than anybody else in terms of where he's come from the start of the year to now.
That'll do it for us here today on this episode of Locked On Reds. Thanks so much for joining us. Coming up on tomorrow's episode, we will get you set for the weekend series with the Milwaukee Brewers. Is it the last gasp? We'll cover that on the next Locked On Reds. Until then, Steve, what can people expect from you and me?
We're going to keep coming up with creative new ways for this team to try and win. We're going to be monitoring the rumors. We're going to be listening to what's going on around baseball. We're going to gather up all that information and bring it back right here to keep you locked on Reds every single day. Don't pitch to Yelich over the weekend.